Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, we're going to do a quick little project using some leftover black pre-dyed leather for a flashlight holster. Got this awesome bright LED flashlight that, especially when I go camping, I like to keep it handy, and it seems like I never have it when I need it. So I'm going to make me a little holster, that way I can carry it with me and it'll be there all the time. So that's what we're doing today. I've got some black pre-dyed leather left over for some other projects that I did. I got this at Kentucky Leather and Hides. Go check them out. Just Google Kentucky Leather and Hides, and that'll take you to their website, and you can check out everything they've got. They've got anything you can think of, so go check them out. They've even got exotic stuff there. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm trying not to do any stitching on this project. I think we'll use some rivets, make it quick, easy, simple to do. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so I've got these leftover pieces that I had from another project that I did. So this one is a little more pliable. That's what I'm going to use on the outside part of the holster. This is a little thicker, maybe a little stiffer anyway, and I'd say this is probably about 7 or 8 ounce. So is this. This just seems to be a little stiffer than this. So, and then I've got this extra piece over here. So what I want to do is I want to try to make this like a little holster. So I'm not going to put a bottom in it, because as you can see, this flashlight is smaller, the tube is smaller here, then it expands out. So what I want to do is, normally I would think you'd put a flashlight in a holster like this. Well, I'm going to turn it over, put the smaller end in like this, and then I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to close this, just to keep that safe, keep it from hitting anything. So I'm going to put these two together, the finished side down for the back, and then the finished side up for the front. I'm going to grab a couple of larger plastic clamps, and again, I'm swinging from the fence on this. It's just something that I wanted to do to get done for myself, and this has a nice long lanyard on it, and I'm gonna make that to where that lanyard fits in there also. Then it'll hang out, so when you pull on the lanyard, it'll pull your flashlight out of the holster, so it'll be easy to get to. I'm going to do it just like I would a holster for a gun if this was the barrel. So I'll pull it down. I'm going to put this down and mate these two bottom lines down here and try to get them as straight as possible. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze that leather around the bottom of that flashlight as tight as I can, and that's where my clamps are going to come in. Then I'm going to put clamps on that in a couple of places at the bottom, and then at the top of where that starts to widen out. That's going to want to pull that up away from bottom piece because of the spring tension on it. So I'm going to hold that down. And then I'm going to mark this using a straight edge and a stylus. I'm just going to put, and I can tell you right now, I need to move this over because I've got more leather over here than I do on the other side, and I want it as even as possible so I have plenty of room to rivet that together. So I'm going to move this over. Now try to do this again with my clamps. And then I'll hold that down. My straight edge up there. So my straight edge is 1 inch wide. So I think I'm going to start with that. And I'll take my scribe and scribe down my leather on this side. Hold that so it can't move on me. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I'm going to push that down. And scribe that all the way down. That'll give me a point of reference to where I can start. I can cut that. Now, I want to make sure that I keep that through to the other side so I can match those. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back off, set this aside, take my knife and my straight edge, and I'm going to go ahead and trim that on those scribe lines. So I'll trim that side off. And this will not be square because this flashlight is thicker on one end than it is the other. So this is the front, and you can see it's not square, it's thinner up here. So let's go back to where we were. Let's bring this down just like we would if we were making a holster for a pistol, and the barrel was at the bottom. I'm going to squeeze that in and put my clamps back on. The clamps are just like a third hand to help hold that to that flashlight and keep it nice and snug while I'm transferring these lines. So keeping everything nice and tight, push down to make sure it's not lifting up where this is bowing. Then I'm going to take my scribe again, and I'm going to scribe the leather for the back right off of where I cut the front leather straight. So I'm using my front as my guide. Now I can move that out of the way. And I've got my scribe lines on this side. So I can go ahead cut that side. Cut this side. That'll end up being my back of the holster. Make sure I turn it back around this direction. So this should match up now to my front as soon as I get it flattened back out on here. Those clamps do help, but they also make it tough to keep that flat because it wants to curl back up on the edges. So now what I can do is I'll take my awl and I'll make some spots on here. I'm going to put a piece of scrap underneath this so that I don't damage my self-healing mat. And I want to keep this as even as possible as I do this. I know you can't see it from there, but I'll show you in a minute. But that keeps this curled around so it hugs the bottom of that flashlight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of marks on here with, I could use a scribe, or I'm using an awl, where I'm going to place these rivets. So I'm just putting a little mark in the leather. And I was going to tap it through with the hammer. That's why I put the extra piece of scrap leather back there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make a mark on the top, and then I'm going to go across and keep them even all the way up, left to right. Make another mark and go to the third. And do the same thing. So now we got 3 marks on this side for rivets, 3 marks on this side for rivets. I know these line up, so I can take my clamps off. Now I need to get a height for this. So if I look at it from the outside of the front piece, these marks are going to come right down underneath where this starts widening out. That's what's going to stop it from falling through. So I know I can go up, looks like probably about a ½ an inch from those marks. So I'll get this lined up on my cutting mat so I'm square with the bottom here. And then I'll go approximately a ½ inch above those marks. then that's where I'll cut this. And that'll be the top of my front. So that's what it would look like on the front. And that would wrap around like so. So it's going to get bigger here, so it's not going to fall through. That's the idea. So then we need to look at the back. And on the back, these match. We can make our holes all the way through on each side so that this matches. I'm leaving this top part extended out until I get this part done, so I know exactly how I want to trim it off, and maybe even pull this over to make some type of closure. So next thing I want to do, let's put our scrap back in there, is I want to match those up on one end here, and I'm going to take my awl and my mallet, and I'm going to punch that through so I'm through both pieces, and I'm punching through on those spots that I marked for my rivets. Then I'll move it over to the other side, line it up, because remember, it's when you squeeze these together, this is going to change the angle. So you have to do both sides separately to keep the angle correct. And it depends on your flashlight too. So I've got those marked. Now I can go ahead and take my punch and punch each one of those. I need to clean my punch out. And I can punch each one of those holes that I've marked on both sides of each piece. So there's the front. Set it aside, and then we'll do the back. And remember, the back is a little thicker leather. Or a little stiffer, as I mentioned at the beginning. Knocking stuff everywhere. Alright. So there's my punched rivet holes. I'm going to go ahead and flatten those out on the back a little bit. And then get my hardware out. And I'm going to see about trimming these after I put it together. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Never done it like that before. But we're going to see if I can actually do that. Now I'm going to take my rivet setter. I'm going to set these on my poly board instead of an anvil, just so I can get good compression in it. And it looks like I'm going to be using a 5/16 . could see here. I don't know, we may need to go to the 3/16. This isn't very thick leather. Let's try 3/16 and see. Yeah, 3/16 would be perfect. So I'll grab my setter, put it on my cap, and I'll set that first one. Then I can go ahead and do the top one, and that'll line everything up on that side. Put a cap, grab my setter, and then I'll grab the third one and do the center. If I can find a cap. Got my caps and my rivets together there. Now that I have that side done, I can go ahead and move to this side. So I'll still do the same thing. I'll grab a 3/16 rivet. I'll go ahead and mold this now up. Put my rivet in from the back just like I did the other side. Now I can pull this up the way it's going to be finished and put my cap on. And go ahead and set that rivet. I need two more. Just like, I'll have three, just like the other side. So we'll go ahead and do the top one. Put on my cap. And then I can do the center one. These 3/16 for this thickness of leather is about perfect. Alright, so those are all set. Now we're going to have to see if my flashlight will fit in there like I had planned. I'll do the right side there. And let's turn the lanyard. And there's how my flashlight fits in. It's too thick up here to go through, and it just barely comes to the bottom. There's the lanyard, so I can just pull on it and that'll pull my flashlight right out. So I'll be able to get to it very quickly. So that part worked great. Now what I have to do is decide what I want to do to finish this out on the back or on the sides and the corners, and then do I want to attempt to make me a strap to go over this and tie off somehow so the flashlight can't fall out. I don't think the flashlight's going to fall out, so I may be better off to take this over like so to the back, and then that way I can have my belt loop built right in. I don't have to add a belt loop. So let's go ahead and let's do one thing at a time here. Let's go ahead and finish how I want this corner, or how I want to finish this look here. I don't want it squared off like this. So I think what I'll do is I'll take something small and round here, and I'll make a round corner and let's see what that looks like. Use one of my anvils, and I'll come in about 1/4 inch from the side because I don't think we need anything that wide. So I'll come in 1/4 inch and go ahead and draw that, and then I'll come in right at 1/4 inch up here, and I'll do the same thing. Then I can connect those lines, and that'll be my cut. That'll be where I'll cut this. And this black ink pen shows up just enough on this black dyed leather so I can cut it and got a good guide here to go by. Now this top part, I'm going to end up cutting it differently anyway because it's going to be my belt loop. So let's go ahead and I'll cut this front piece first. And that cut right off. Now I'll use it to guide my cut for the back. I can go ahead and cut that off, get that out of the way. Go ahead and do my radius. And do the same thing on the other side. Again, I'm following that line that I drew on there with the radius. And then I'm cleaning that up after the fact. Now I can follow that front piece of leather and then cut it out, get it out of the way, and then radius this corner. So let me put this back in here and show you what we have. So now I've got these corners radiused, and I took 1/4 inch off of each side of this. So now it's a lot more streamlined. Now all I have to do is transfer that somehow to the back so I can make my belt loop back here. So I don't want it any wider than my holster itself. So what I'm going to have to do is cut this down And let's take the flashlight back out. And I think I'll cut it down even with the edge that I just cut. I'll use my straight edge, and I can tweak it if I need to. So let's cut this down the same width as this. Fold it over. Now I can see that I need to cut this off a little bit. And what I'll do is I'll cut it off above where it starts to bend, or on that radius. So I'm going to mark that. And then I'll measure that. Make sure I can see my mark here. Yeah. Alright, I'll measure that. That is 3/4 of an inch down. So I'll measure from the top of the holster, and that'll give me a better idea instead of measuring from the bottom. So it's right at 3 3/8. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Go 3 3/8. Mark it. Get a nice clear mark over here at 3 3/8. And I go ahead and put my straight edge on it. We'll cut it across. And you can tell that that back piece is definitely harder, thicker. I don't know if it's thicker, but it's definitely harder than the front piece. So if we fold that over now, it's shy, the end is shy of this corner. So let's put our flashlight back in there again, so we have some stability there. And we can fold this over, and that would give us our belt loop. So now all we have to do is figure out how are we going to, now that we've sealed that up on this side, how are we going to make this belt loop stay in there? I don't want to put any more rivets here. So probably the best thing to do is I could put some stitches on the edge here to keep that tacked down, or I could put, I might be able to get a rivet right here. The only problem is that doesn't hold these corners down. So, but I don't want to make this look bad by putting holes and stitches here either. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a hole in the center, and I know how to get around the. I'm going to cut these sharp corners off. I know how to get around the rivet problem. I'll show you what I'm going to use. Got rid of those sharp corners. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and find the center side to side, and this is 2 3/4, so 1 3/8 is going to be the center, and I'm going to go ahead and punch a hole in that just like I would for a rivet, but I'm not going to use a rivet. I'm going to use a Chicago screw, and a Chicago screw will allow me to go in there and screw this in and not have to beat on it with a mallet or anything. So let me see which side I want my screw. I want my screw on the outside so I can physically tighten it from the outside. So let me mark this. I'm going to use let's see, the screw's going on the outside, so this hole's going to be a little bit bigger than a rivet. So I'll go to my next size punch, and then all I have to do is get this hole punched in here. So I need to find something to slide in there that I could punch against without damaging the leather on the front. So like a mallet handle would work perfect if you don't care about damaging the end of your mallet handle a little bit. It's soft enough, it's not going to hurt the punch. And luckily I've got another mallet. And remember, I'm just want to go through to where I'm not damaging anything. And you can see the little round mark on my mallet handle, but made it through and it didn't damage the leather on the front at all. So let's go ahead and take the female part of the Chicago screw and put it from the inside, and I gotta squeeze it through there. What I may have to do is take my stylus and open that hole up from the inside a little bit, just because I used the punch from the outside. Let's see if that take care of that. And there it goes, it just popped through. So this is the side that has the female threads. I can go ahead and put the back folded over. I want to make sure it fits over that also. So I'll do the same thing with my stylus to clean that hole up a little bit. I've got my finger in there pushing on that. And again, I could use the mallet handle. Alright, so there it is through the second piece of leather. That's going to create my belt loop right through here. And I'll use my ruler as my belt. And then all I have to do is take the male part of my Chicago screw, and let me get a slotted screwdriver, and I will put just a touch. You can use whatever you want. You can use Loctite. I just use a little bit of this Leathercraft glue, and that keeps it from backing out on its own, and I just put a little tiny dot on it. You could use blue Loctite, that would work fine. Anything like that. If I can get my, there we go. Get my glue opened up. I just put a little dot on the end of it and let that work its way down on the threads a little bit. And I'll take a, while I'm at it, I'll clean that tip off so I don't have to deal with that next time. You could use contact cement, you could use whatever you want. It's really not that big a deal what you use. Just something to keep that from wanting to back out on its own. I haven't ever had any problems with it, but just kind of some insurance there. So I'll go ahead and take that. And start threading that in. I'll hold the back side tight with my finger. So it doesn't spin. And then there's my Chicago screw. It's sealed up. Now you can put your belt through there, and your flashlight holster is ready to use. So no stitching, 6 rivets, 3 on each side. You can see I could actually turn this on while it's in the holster because I can get to the button on the end. The lanyard stays out, so I can pull this out of here, out of this holster real easy with the lanyard, or grab a hold of the light itself. Either way. So I've got easy, quick access to my light. Got my belt loop, so I can run my belt through there. And then, so 6 rivets and 1 Chicago screw is the way I did it. There's all kinds of ways you could do this. So again, I kind of did it on the fly instead of actually making a pattern or anything and thinking it through before I actually got started. But now I've got a nice solid full grain leather holster for my flashlight, so it'll always be right there on my belt. Alright, so another project in the books. Turned out great. I love it. It's going to be handy that it has the on-off button right there where I can get to it. I could turn it on before I ever even pull it out of the holster. Goes in and out nicely, but it's still tight enough to where it's not going to fall out of there. Like if I bend over, it's not going to fall out of my holster. So I appreciate you coming along, appreciate you watching, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.